So it's time we can recite the praises to Shakyamuni. Page 2. Page 2.
Dumbo Jomde de Shebo Rajumbo Yantobo Sumbe Sanje Rodan Shasu Devara Shebo Jite Chenmo Jebu Due Kalo Chuo Lana Mepa Lana Mena Dumbo Sanje Jomde de Benyewa Shanya Tuba Lwa Chante Chudo Jazu Jeru Dumbo Jomde de Shin Shepa Rachon Yana Sobe Ribadan Shazu Dema Deva Shepa Jitin Chemba Jebu Nue Kalo Yugo Lana Meba Lana Mena Jitamba Sanje Chomde Bejawa Shagyan Tuba La Jazu Chudu Jazu Chu Dumbo Jomde de Shemo Rajumba Yanda Lobe Sanje Rikpa Shazu Devara Sheba Jiten Chemba Jebu Due Kalo Gyuro Lana Meba Lana Menamge Dumbo Sanje Jomde de Bejawa Shagya Tuba La Jazu Chudu Jazu Chu Lade Kani Dovo Ketante Satin Dila Gomba Dumborne Mane Jikten Dina Chote Sun Tese Deva Chula Chaze Nanda Kuma Chodu Susanwa Ishe Yasu Sege Rumbo Aba Jikten Suna Lame Gombo Chunyi Chula Chaze Senjo Dumbo Jime Tabe Zedon Dawa Jela Zelu Dede Chundra Siva Sumati Nyame Kimchi Jela Zelu Gombo Tuje Jedemba Tamche Kimbe Domba Sona Yeden Yaso Jen Kishin Jela Zelu Tabe Deja Jawar Juru Yewe Yenzon Lefu Chitu Dama Chitu Shiguru Java Java Jone Jove Lanyante Lava Dava Chinge Damba Yende Gende Layan Java Dupya Chiam Mishashi Ewa Buzun Sobar Rangi Sene Yonsu Sanje Tempai Kanarari Marmeda Yuma Silva Churita Melan Lodan Tintabu Duje Chuna Ditarita Sanandi Tanche Sipai Otan Kovne Jinje Dadude Galan Madan Shive Lachude Sive Solengo
To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, nor of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, the supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Our immaculate three worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one God to vestments, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path of sublime pure reality, to that Dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community and tending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous acts. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by waves of aging, sickness, and death. The Heart Sutra, page 4 in Tibetan. Page 11. Thus I have heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Vajrayana on Vulture's Peak, together with a great assembly of monks and bodhisattvas, At that time, the Blessed One was observed in the concentration and had examined all phenomena, all profound illumination. And at that time, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, was engaged in the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra spoke to the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, "How should those of good family learn who wish to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond?" As he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, replied to the Venerable Shariputra, saying, "O Shariputra, whatever son out of good family wishes to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, karmic formations, and consciousness are all empty. Therefore, Shariputra, all phenomena are empty without characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are neither impure nor free from impurity. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, and there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no karmic formation, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There are no spheres of the eye, but no spheres of the mind. There are none of these, all the way up to the sphere of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, nor is there destruction of ignorance. There are none of these, all the way up to no death, nor is there destruction of old age and death. Thus there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, there is no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, all Bodhisattvas hold to the wisdom gone beyond, and because there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. Passing utterly beyond falsity, they reach beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell on the three times by relying on the wisdom gone beyond, fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, most perfect and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the wisdom gone beyond, the mantra of great insight, the unequaled and unsurpassed mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as the truth, for there is no deception. The mantra of the wisdom gone beyond is proclaimed. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn the profound. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and praised the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, very good, O son of good family. It is exactly like that. The profound wisdom gone beyond should be practiced exactly as you have said, and then the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra, the noble Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering in the world with its gods, men, anti-gods, and spirits, their hearts full of joy, praised the words of the Blessed One. So ends the noble discourse on the essence of the wisdom gone beyond. Today is our Sunday class in which we study the treatise on the great stages of the path. This is the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. It is the way to enlightenment, the course that leads to enlightenment. Enlightenment is the state of the Buddha ground. So today's teaching concerns this path. For example, if there were a nice place that we were intended to go to, we'd say that is the place and this is the way. So the Buddha ground is the place and the path is this way. So just like there's a place and where we need to go or intend to go, and we are able to recognize that in that place, the conditions are very supportive and there's satisfaction and contentment there. Once we recognize that this place we're going to has those qualities, then we go. And in this case, the Buddha ground, the state of Buddhahood, is the very potential for bringing about the well-being of both ourselves and others. And there it is accomplished. That is the Buddha ground. That is the Buddha field. That is enlightenment. And then when it comes to actually traveling to the place, then there are different ways that one may go about traveling. It may be straightforward and comfortable as a trip, or it might be a roundabout and uncomfortable trip with hardship, a rough way. But the best way of all is the very way outlined in the great treatise. There are many different steps or stages, but if following this text, an individual becomes fully qualified and capable of traveling in the best way, then the journey, the actual trip, would be comfortable. Just as when we strike out initially, we might go east or west or north or south. There are many different spiritual traditions, and their ultimate destination is had in common, shared, but there are various ways that one may go, directions that one may strike out. When we talk about a means of going somewhere, when the teacher is explaining that, we refer to outer conditions, but what should be understood is that the discussion really has everything to do instead with the mind inside of each individual. So the place to which we are traveling is the mind inside, and the going itself is undertaking these stages in the path on the inside, in the mind.
그지. 따지당 하나도 선지 우유가 간대지 뭐이나 간대 구조지 맞게 받들라 거기 대화지 세기어레스. 대화지 세기어레 동네지 세다 지기어레스. 제가 내리 인도 땅 하나도 강가를 거야. 무트마인지네 다반데 선지네다 미네다 간제 수수그 돼야지 대화 되고요. 동네 되고요. 말해서
So all who have breath, all that breathe, man and beast alike, are after the same ends, which is they wish to enjoy satisfactions and to avoid dissatisfaction and discontents. And this is true from the smallest insect, for all human beings, for all animals, whatever the sentient being, their wish is to experience contentment and satisfaction.
개와 몽골랑지 도시는 대화체 탑시 제여를 있는 대화 뇌기열 대화 체기열 대화 체신기열 말스 동의의 수수 뇌기열 말에 있는 동의 규칙 많아서 도대여스 근데 이거 하나도 받아보더라 제일 내가 아니 내가 약을 쳐라 자제 유유 누구 쳐라 자제 망고들 차대요 해서
Now in many lives we've continued this search for satisfaction. All of us alike, for many lifetimes, have wished for satisfaction, sought out satisfaction, but have ultimately failed to find that satisfaction because we don't know the means to finding that satisfaction. And we wish to avoid and intended to avoid causes for dissatisfaction, but instead we've brought about those very causes for dissatisfaction. And overall, our efforts fall into poor efforts rather than constructive efforts.
냠도 trouble 체제는 포도냠도 현재도 아니 포도기 하는 것도 대화때 두고 말을 가지고 동해만도 대화때 두고 말았어. 저 두고 말았어. 다 단에 말로 전리는 좀 받을 라면. 아니 가지고 일단 유모도 대주도 파타는 거지. 아니 비차들 생기념도 도보들 장바다 이제 자주 쓰는데도 보면 아니 생각나 콘도도 trouble 소토고 거래서
Up until this point, we have in our minds tended to rely upon the mental afflictions as support for what we do, intending to find satisfaction. Our closest friend and ally, or that on which we lean, are the mental afflictions, desire and aversion and pride. But they are unable to bestow any sort of satisfaction. They are only able to give us dissatisfaction, discontents. Now, the intention is to study the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment in order to distance ourselves from those mental afflictions upon which we have formerly relied, and distancing ourselves from those things, come close, become familiar, learn to rely on love and compassion and bodhicitta.
만화도 근데 부구직 서준 시기 여바이나 콜 파마야고 매바다 저거야고 매나 근데 부구들 상고 유한 시작하고 와서 콜 부구들 이제 야고 유한 하고 와서 딱 콜 파마야고 여바다 아니 저거야고 유한 부구들은 시기 상고 야고 차로 와서 되는 시 만화도 셈지 부구직 서준 제보다 상당 때자는 좀 냐면 제보를 해서
This may be likened to the way that we educate and nurture a child. If nurturing a child, that child doesn't have a mother and a father, parent figures, or friends, then that child will have a difficult time growing and then living a meaningful life. But when that child is nurtured by family and friends, then that child is more likely in that nurturing education to live a meaningful life.
대대지 쌤들 이모고 왕도 마송와 쌤 계획을 추어서 방향을 된다. 아니 말아도 배 쌤들 주의다. 간다를 가서 빼들 마송은 지 강바도 지나 강바디나 자라님과 페마도 있는 데서 봐요. 아니 자라 싸와 배원에는 그 타고 벤트에 왔더니 주가 나시 안 되는 말아도 자주 쌤들 받들 교선 고승기 라네. 아니 쌤은 나는 배다 참바다 니지 자주 생년다만도 생들이 자라 그 타고야 간대거나 신체는 이제 지기 있는 그런쪽을 저거에서
Then we outline our intentions in this way, our thoughts in this way, and set our intention and motivation in this way. No longer will we be under the sway of mental afflictions. Instead, we distance ourselves from mental afflictions and adjust and improve our mindset. In the same way that if we're homeowners and our house is just filled with junk, we wish to eliminate that junk. Anything that's useless we throw out, and then we bring in things that are valuable and actually useful to us. In the same way, we may fill our houses then with love and compassion and bodhicitta through listening to the teachings, studying the teachings, and then meditating upon them. So in this way, we may adjust our intention. So this covers the adjustment of motivation for both teacher and listener in a dharma setting. Then we've covered motivation and establishing a proper motivation, and now to the subject at hand, which is the condensed teachings of the Buddha, the various extensive teachings, all the teachings, scriptural teachings of the Buddha are brought together in summary form in the great treatise on the stages to the path. And as they are brought together, that means too, brought together are the instruction in the lineage of Arya Nagarjuna and in the lineage of Arya Sangha. And those instructions are for the purpose of bringing all sentient beings alike to the state of Buddhahood, and the way in which that is done, the means for practicing so that comes to pass is presented here in the text. When teaching this subject, for the instructor and for those listening, instructor and listener both will follow the customary outline with its four general headings, which are showing the greatness of the teaching's author in order to establish that it is of noble origin, showing the greatness of the teaching in order to engender respect for the instructions, how to listen to and explain the teachings which possess the two greatnesses, and how to lead students with the actual instructions. within the first heading, showing the greatness of the teaching's author in order to establish that it is of noble origin. This is to find out, to discover that the texts upon which the text is based, the text upon which we practice, to discover, to know for certain whether they are credible or not. We investigate the author of the text itself. And so we've arrived at this section now. In India, in the 7th and 8th centuries, in Indian culture in the 7th and 8th centuries, caste was of great importance, significance. And so part of the process of showing that an author was credible and of noble origin was to indicate the caste from which they came. And Atisha is said to have come from the most illustrious, the highest caste, the kingly caste. So within this first heading, showing the greatness of the teaching's author in order to show that it is of noble origin, the first subheading there is how he took rebirth in an excellent lineage. And then in the second subheading is how upon this basis he attained good qualities. Within that section on how Atisha attained good qualities, there are two further subsections. They are how, knowing many texts, he gained the good qualities of scriptural knowledge. And the second is how, engaging in proper practice, he gained the good qualities of experiential knowledge. So now we are proceeding to look at how he gained qualities of experiential knowledge, which will concern the three higher trainings in particular. Within this first subsection, how knowing many texts, he gained the good qualities of scriptural knowledge. That scriptural knowledge is in particular scriptural knowledge of the three baskets of the Buddha's teachings. They are the Vinaya basket, the Sutra basket, and the Abhidharma basket. Atisha relied upon, especially in particular, 12 teachers, but in addition, all told, some 157 teachers. And by way of relying upon studying at the feet of these realized adepts with scriptural knowledge, he developed his scriptural knowledge. Within scripture, if you look behind behind me here, we have this 103 scriptures here. And if they are all condensed or if they are organized into their topics, they'll be organized into three. And why is it that there are these three? That is, why is it that there's the Vinaya, the Sutra, and the Abhidharma baskets of these teachings? It is because on the basis of there being especially three subjects, there then are these three baskets. These three topics are ethical discipline, samadhi, or mental concentration, and wisdom. These are the three topics. Each topic has its own basket, or its own basket. And so, as we said, and so the first training, the first higher training is the training in ethical discipline. Its basket is the Vinaya basket. The training in samadhi or mental concentration, this topic has its basket as the sutra basket. And the higher training in wisdom is the Abhidharma basket. So these are the three topics: ethical discipline, samadhi, and wisdom. And from the Tripitaka, the three different baskets, these baskets are the Vinaya basket, the Sutra basket, and the Abhidharma basket. The process for study then is, when studying ethical discipline, to rely upon the Vinaya, the Vinaya Pitaka. And from that, the Vinaya, one comes to consummate or bring to completion the training in ethical discipline. By relying upon the sutras, one perfects the training in concentration or samadhi. And through reliance upon the Abhidharma, one brings to completion the training in higher wisdom. The training in ethical discipline is the basis or the foundation for all that comes afterwards. It is the basis and foundation for successful development of samadhi and wisdom. It's like a field or a plot of ground. When it is well tended, then that plot may be fertile for the growth of crops. And in that way, ethical discipline is like that fertile ground, and from that fertile ground comes samadhi and wisdom.
비어라 결혼마지 아니네 뭐요
Mm.
오 이게 아니 또다 수rum 라벌 랍시 저도 디게디어 소다 디게디어 레슨
Mhm. Within ethical discipline, of most importance is the Pratimoksa Vows, and the Pratimoksa Vows are held by eight kinds of sangha, especially the fully ordained bhikshu and bhikshuni, but also the bhikshu and bhikshuni in their training, and then the bhikshu or the novitiate bhikshu and bhikshuni, that is the novitiates. So 8 of the sangha have the Pratimoksa vows.
나 조지라는 가리어레스나다 이 코란 되어가지고 공두사로디 아니 나술로자와 조지년도라다 야간에 로니 시비얼 아니 그걸로 주변 시비얼 제가 코란이 조지 되어가지 조지를 남들 미들 뒤티샤 니나 아니 간데 숨으려서나 아니 수수탑에 도버 초다 되면 수니사 되어가지 나도 되어가지 춘이 인도티베 고르슈네 수준 양아식 송화제 성칭이만 더 송요레스 제가다 가르친 거였으나다 수준 라발라네 고랑게 빼 예바 참무지 있는 만큼은 나야 냠내 쉬우지 디나기 요레스 제 안데 빼도 심어서 계산 쉬자
Now, the account of the way in which Atisha possessed the superior vows of individual liberation is found in Nakso Lotsawa's verses of praise celebrating Atisha. Nakso Lotsawa traveled with Atisha in India, lived with him for 2 years in India, and then in Tibet lived with Atisha for another 17 years. And he composed these 80 verses of praise. And on page 38, I bow down, we find in the 80 verses of praise, I bow down to the elder upholder of the texts on discipline, supreme of monks, possessed of the glory of pure deeds. Nakso Lotsawa composed this biography, these verses, and then there's this verse we find. Any transgression to the Pratimoksa vows, rather Atisha prevented there being any, even very small transgression to his Pratimoksa vows. But we already said this in last week.
Oh yeah, that is things lava. That's should be lava. What to watch that thing lava. Kind of slab. Things lava. So Chanju Sembe to what San Yore so much. Chanju Sembe done. Koran Chanju Sembe to what. Ani that now to what the cursing. Oh yeah, then to what in the careers. 최근에 버릇이 디베 거르쇼네 답에 3번 넘버 다주네 전주 투지로 그런 매동어 뭔데 이기잖아 차사들 소에 제가 데이드 안에 고랑게 배 랑게 배섬 기지 이만치 까만치 기지네 마당 배 가두이네 랑게 배 세주치나다 안에 저저바냐네 가르당게 있네다 이 얘기에 나가가 배 시행이 된도 모두 랑게 된다 성격에 매봐 라디오기 배 somebody 아니 배 니마 주도 기직지도이나 마지막 되게 되는 신경 쓰는 선마다 되게 근데 타고 무슨 게 무슨 게 냠마 주고 참 주고 저거 냠내기 자원을 좀 니마도 생 뒤에 되는 게 요래서
So then we'll move to the second section here, that Atisha possessed the Bodhisattva vows. And I'm going to recite this verse from Nakso Lotsawa's 80 verses of praise. You have entered the door of the perfection vehicle, developed the pure, wholehearted resolve, and due to your spirit of enlightenment, you would not desert living beings. I bow down to you, intelligent and compassionate one. This verse describes how it was that Atisha set his own ends aside and took up the well-being of sentient beings as his sole purpose. And at no time, day or night, did he ever return to the solipsism of focus upon one's own ends at the expense of others. At all times, he concerted his effort to bring about the well-being of others. And this was the generation of aspirational bodhicitta. And then that aspirational bodhicitta never declined, but remained firm and fixed in his mind. He continued to practice day and night so that it was so.
이나야는 장주생이 담바데 단도양 그런 장주생 담바만고 쉬어 나 담바만고 쉬어 이내 되게 두 맞은 거 아니 왜 미기 꾸마 제바다 수수고 아마 롱데 제바다 타게 근데 시에스는 지난 그 장주생이 아주 장구요 근데 롱데마다 때는 아니 그런 게 있다 야가니까 슬림이 유라 아니 나와 쪽숨지 봐도 그나 팬 아니 아마 슬림 거 제가 팬 아마 슬림 거제 아니 제네 라메가데 자주 생겼 담바베로 중이 봐라. 담바라데 라고 또바베 딩마 또바바도 또 스파 라마테 장로 데리신 나이레소.
In both the prophecies of gods and humans, or the accounts of both gods and humans, Atisha, between his 28th and his 29th year, is said to have relied upon many teachers and to have mastered the 3 baskets of the Buddha Dharma. But furthermore, he went on to receive teachings and initiations, receive Bodhisattva vows, and enter the mandalas of the secret Vajrayana. And he did this thoroughly, yet he was never of the opinion of himself that he had completed that. And furthermore, he had direct visions of Yidam and teachers who urged him to continue his practice of bodhicitta, and following their recommendation, following their advice, he traveled to meet the great teacher Suvarnavipa, who lived in Indonesia, and he spent 13 months on a ship sailing there. And then when he arrived and met Serlingpa on Suvarnavipa, which is Indonesia, he spent 12 years with Serlingpa, studying the practices of the Bodhisattva vow, until it penetrated to his very depths and was fully understood.
소랑 장주생 니부디 제위자지네 소라 내가 여바 있나야 마지막 투나는데 깔에 때문에 팬 장주생배 담바슈에 맞으라는 툴은 냠스페 툴 깨버지 당보면 저도 말씀도 선제 탐지가 전도 장주생 끼기 있어는 뭐 담자지지 아니 라 담자 찬아니 니만이 저번에 주게 들었대 뒤즈 까만지게 있는 배 발장을 장차는 것들이 장네 아니 담아줄 야가로 패도 중요해서
Yagalai. There are many biographies of Atisha, many namtar of Atisha. Some are more extensive, some are more condensed. And in the Lamrim tradition, there are texts that also give the biographical details of Atisha. So here, in short, it is enough to say that in his life, what he did was exchange in terms of value to his mind, his life and bodhicitta. So it was bodhicitta that was always foremost, and his life took second place. And, and then, having prioritized bodhicitta in that way, he received bodhisattva vows and generated bodhicitta on his continuum, bodhicitta on behalf of sentient beings, that he may achieve Buddhahood for the well-being of those sentient beings. And then to make firm that bodhicitta day and night, without respite, without a moment's break, he continued to make firm and stable bodhicitta. And after all of this, in his time in Suvarnadvipa, he returned to India. Now, knowing the familiarity with the biography of Atisha is valuable, is very beneficial, because one comes to know the various hardships that Atisha confronted as he endeavored to comprehend bodhicitta, and all of the hardships he experienced in Suvarnadvipa, Indonesia, and then returning with gold and silver and pearls, all of which he gave to his teachers that he may receive teachings. And ultimately, though offerings of gold, silver, and pearls and the like were for generating merit, he dedicated them to his teachers, offered them to his teachers, and all that he did in order to receive teachings on bodhicitta, he did, though it may be at the risk of his life. And so when he came back to India, then he came back with jewels and gold, silver, pearls, and offered those to teachers. And there was really no end to the hardship that this study of bodhicitta entailed, to the expenses and the like that it entailed. Familiarity with Atisha's biography, with biographies of spiritual mentors in general, is beneficial in two ways. From one perspective, we may simply see or take as exemplary and then emulate the way in which those teachers exerted themselves in their practice of the Dharma. That's the first. But then from their stories, we may take another example, which is, or rather another lesson, which is that these teachers had to undergo incredible hardship in order to encounter and study the Dharma. Whereas we have conditions that allow us to comfortably listen to the Dharma, study the Dharma. We don't have to exert ourselves in the same way, and we aren't met with the same hardship that teachers of old were. And rarely is there any threat to our life or danger, mortal danger, that comes along with studying the Dharma. So then we may consider ourselves quite fortunate consider ourselves to necessarily have some merit in store to bring such favorable conditions about. And then, so knowing the life stories of these teachers, we may draw these lessons from those stories.
logic logic
직진 상계 직진수 전변내갑들라.
내가 아니 먼저 다 다른 것은 미지 강산 직초야고 제외 미지가 등산 나도 미지 이마직 초야고 제외 미니부디 아니 초제외 손남이냐 말이야. 가르치는 시간은 아니 나도 미지 수수 대고 탐구 이래서 자 뭐로 제시우야고 지나가도 시우야고 제외 소환이 뭐와 수수 강의도 어제는 이거 시로이 받아 나대로 가도다 수수로 와도 제 편도로 제서나 그게 편도 시우이 그 말이 시우이 좀 자꾸 있으려와 어디나신 상계 때문에 뭐만 다르지 내가 전에하고 전에만 보고 시우이가 말와 그래서 때문에 다른 양도도 이마직 제외인데 배수는 지금 뭐만 제거를 수는 채요 그래서 그래서 어디지
Was ist die bei die Angriffs gemacht? Da ganz in die eine Jiktin sange Jiktin zu jump negab de la ne die logic ringland logion shaking die sonandan
메시지 강가스는 메시지 메시지 강간 로존 제 최연의 제별 선언 저와 대단 단단한 좀 이만직 제별 선언
냠바레 relas
가다기 빼도 쉬어야나서 좀 미직 수수 강강의 메두자 막고 가져치네 거기 선반은 소화해요
Allah
수수 강의 이유가 나대가도 시도치가도 그러고 제서나 그거 교수들과 교수 빼고 교이 야고를 봐 어쨌든 dinan시 상계 때문에 뭐만 제발 등산 제와 손은 채요
Familiarity with the life stories of teachers encourages us to generate realization in the same way that they did through meeting hardship and overcoming hardship in order to generate the realizations that those teachers did. So we too, having the occasion to practice the Dharma, modeling our practice after theirs, we too will meet hardship and generate realization. And so we then train in the generation of bodhicitta and take as our example the life stories of spiritual mentors and practice as they do. And with that come blessings, great blessings, great fortune. We are very meritorious now. If you were to compare the merit of an individual at the time of the Buddha who met the Buddha and had studied for a year's time with the Buddha, their merit compared to the merit of a person who had just one day now to study the Dharma, this person who had just one day now is of greater merit. And there's a reason for that. It's because when conditions are not supportive of Dharma practice, then there are all sorts of other cooperating conditions that are required. when there's great hardship, you have to have someone protecting you so that you can make use of your time in such a way. So in the past, there was hardship. Someone had to protect and make space and time for the person to practice. Situation and the conditions are different now. And that is an indicator of the way in which the merit that we have now is greater than the merit of that individual who was there with the Buddha for 1 year.
아니 같이 그래서나 아니 먼저 라마도 하기 시에시리 너콜라 산제기 롱땡에 하기 시에시리 세도와 오 뒤도 용해도 가서는 먼저 신의톱도 슈팅고자 땡에지 실라서 땡에지 자 아니 지금 땡에지 자비 아니 다다 먼저 꾸도 지금 가지기 자다 상다 세반교 내 지도 왔어 다치 수수 세미나 지금 신의도 톱도 지금 땡에지 톱이나 그래서 산지문 제투를 했어. 건조 산지지도 아주 미도 하나지. 만든 아주 로기시 제르무시 지도 자매하고 숨기시를 지도 자매하고 제르무시 농대에서 도와. 전화가 수선의 신에도 땡기도 되다. 아니 산지 꾸지나 산지 제야 그래서 미가 토고요 와. 제가 되려 제가 단단한 담을 내고는 뜻 주주대에서 땅에는 공개 동의도 공 신에도 땡기도 도나 아니 산이 공무원 제투야 미워서 용화에 이거 차 이거 했으면
Through practice, one stabilizes samadhi, and with that increasingly stable samadhi, then various exceptional events are made possible. One meditates, stabilizes their samadhi, and then we know of these stories of adepts meditating, stabilizing their samadhi, joining that samadhi with insight, and then with samadhi and insight joined, and the power that comes with that, adepts had direct visions of deities. For instance, Tsongkhapa had a direct vision of Manjushri, and Manjushri taught Tsongkhapa during that direct vision, and then put forth a prophecy regarding Tsongkhapa's future then too. So from the potential and power of joining samadhi with critical insight, it is possible for ordinary individuals such as ourselves, having stabilized samadhi, and then joining that with insight, to create the possibility for direct encounters with deities, in which it's the experience of meeting with an adept deity face to face or in person, just like meeting an individual in person. Now we have the experience ordinarily of encountering a representation of a deity, the Buddha and the like, and seeing a representation made of copper or of bronze or of steel. We don't have the experience of meeting directly with a personage, but with joining samadhi and insight, an ordinary individual will be able to, when encountering any representation of a deity, encounter the personage itself as though it were, as it is, a person.
모두지 다 하나 저는 조지가 전주선배기 동바다 선생님 군대에 동바랑 동바시 냠은 도랑이로 전주선배 동바에서 아니 냠수랑 배다 전주선배기 동바다 다 자동 쪽에 전주선배 동바 개간사도 정말 아니 자동 쪽에 아니 예지시 시루 다동 용라게 감지 동바 되게 되어와 아니 내가 그랬다 동바도 모두 참모들이 임바이나요 네 마게버시 아니 계속 자동된 동바들이 다 조절다 용식만 이내가 저기 예바 추기들이 중앙이나요 아니 니모 중앙 생활 중앙 니모샤 어디를 지냐면 나요 제가 전주선배기 동바도 그다 전주선배기 라면 돌을 표듯이 것들을 해서
Atisha then received the Bodhisattva vows from Serlingpa, received those vows. The vows were generated on his continuum, and then he trained in the practices that bodhicitta entails. Generally, we describe 18 root downfalls to the Bodhisattva vows and a further 46 transgressions to the Bodhisattva vows. In the case of Atisha, it wasn't that he ever had a root downfall or a transgression, but there are these numbered transgressions, 18 and 46, and day and night he continued to train in bodhicitta. So this, the way in which Atisha possessed the Bodhisattva vows, really we covered last week, but we've done a recap of it here. And so now we look at the last section, how it was that Atisha possessed the vows of the Vajrayana. Now on page 39, that Atisha possessed the vows of the Vajrayana. Nakso Losawa's 80 verses of praise. Having entered the door of the Vajrayana, you saw yourself as a deity and possessed the Vajra mind, Lord of contemplation. Avadutipa, I bow down to you who engage in the secret conduct. So this is the verse of praise. Nakso Losawa expresses praise in general, calling Atisha chief of yogis due to his reaching the concentration of the stage of generation. So the stage of generation, in that stage, one's own body is generated in the aspect of a deity, and we're familiar with this process because we have been initiated into the secret mantrayana. We have received subsequent permissions as well, and in those initiations, the Vajra master will say, out of emptiness generate the aspect of the deity. Out of emptiness generate the aspect of the deity. So it was this process of generating out of emptiness, generation stage aspect of the deity that Atisha completed, and then furthermore the completion stage in which the mind of the adept is identical with the mind of Vajradhara, that too was completed. Furthermore, with the completion of the generation and completion stages, vigilance and mindfulness were never lacking for Atisha, a constant in those stages, and thereby he had samadhi or mental concentration supporting those stages. And so it says, due to his reaching the concentration of the stage of generation in which he saw his body as divine, and the concentration of the stage of completion, whereupon he attained the Vajra state of mind. Having to do with the secret Mantrayana, there are many explanations, other explanations that may be referred to. If in short we were to just describe, there are 14 root downfalls to Vajrayana vows, and then an additional 8 thick transgressions, heavy transgressions they're called. But the point is that Atisha had become an adept who had consummated the completion stages, and therefore was an exceptionally advanced adept. And so that's enough for the secret Mantrayana for now. This was all part of the discussion under the heading of how it is that Atisha possessed the training in ethics anyway. This was part of that section on ethics. And now, ethical discipline. And now we move to the second subsection, how it was that Atisha possessed the training in concentration.
That thing is the tomorrow mind, but ni share tomorrow thing is the tomorrow mind thing is this. So tomorrow the shine sim the thing is shine to be the shine to listen this one said bomb yell kale never to do that tomorrow mind body and it killing the demo to killing the demo to what they want to share with us.
Then in the second section, how it is that Atisha possessed the training in concentration. The training in concentration is of 2 kinds, the ordinary kind and the extraordinary kind. The ordinary kind is shamatha, having achieved shamatha. And with the completion, or rather with the achievement of shamatha, there's a mental suppleness, a physical pliability, suppleness that comes along with it, in which one doesn't experience the physical hardship. And so that is the ordinary kind. The extraordinary kind of concentration is the generation stage. When shamatha is achieved, then ordinarily, if we meditate for 15 minutes or half an hour or an hour, in an hour meditation, physically we would certainly feel discomfort. But when shamatha is actually achieved, then there is a physical and mental suppleness that is achieved too, wherein physically, no matter how long we are seated, unmoving, there is no physical hardship at all. And mentally, no matter how long it is we are sitting, there's no distraction at all. So with that physical suppleness from shamatha, then you sit cross-legged for a long time, and though you do, there's no physical pain, no discomfort. You sit still for a long time, and during that time, you remain undistracted. That is to have achieved that shamatha. And to achieve the extraordinary concentration of the generation stage, that means that from emptiness, the aspect of the deity is generated. And then furthermore, the 24-hour day is divided into six sessions of 4 hours each. And in those 4 hours, one is still, physically still and concentrated. And during that physical stillness of 4 hours, at the very least, one feels no physical pain or discomfort, and mentally one remains undistracted. That, at minimum, is to have achieved the extraordinary mental concentration. In the biographies of Atisha, the way in which Atisha engaged in deity yoga and mastered deity yoga through 6 years and then a further 3 years of practice are described. And that shamatha that he achieved, it was of this sort. But furthermore, in the abiding in that shamatha, he received teachings and instructions from Dakini, which is an indication of that shamatha being conjoined with critical insight or insight, great insight. And so with conjoined shamatha and vipassana or insight, he had these experiences, and we have scriptural support. We have authenticating support for this description of Atisha.
Oh yeah, that is the way that thing is in go to the charging in the number of that's so much share of love of body. And they got tomorrow,
With that, then we complete this section on how it is that Atisha possessed the trainings in concentration. And now we move to how it is that Atisha possessed the training in wisdom. And this training in wisdom too is of 2 kinds: common training and uncommon training, or ordinary and extraordinary training. The common training in wisdom is the generation stage that Atisha, from emptiness, generated the aspect of the deity in the generation stage. That is the common training in wisdom. The uncommon training in wisdom is the completion stage that Atisha achieved. And with the completion stage, then continue the training in the practices of the Bodhisattva.
가르치는다 남도고 유라께 사와데 지단다 누구 남다만고 요리네다 저거 디나나 아니 상한 도지 티베 남는 슈네 아니 뭐다 한달 졸라마슬라마다 돈이 또네 아니 돈이 무슨도 또 벌레도 제 참마도 내서 이거는 남다는 소리였어. 그래서
On page 40, under the heading "The Uncommon Training in Wisdom," there's this verse from Nakso Losawa. He gained a special concentration of the stage of completion. 80 verses of praise says, "It is clear that you achieve the path of preparation in accordance with the text of the mantra vehicle." And that path of preparation is the path that leads to the cusp of direct insight into emptiness.
뭐야, 나도 이제 셔를 라발라다 투모 마이크로 녹존데 여러분들 비즈로 때문에 어디지는 나 셔를 라발다 때문에 되겠지. 나는 subject 수마 나 인데들이 녀네 아니다 가르치기로 했어. 나 때마다 그래 된식으로 와. 뭐야, 때마다 저 가르치기로 했어. 나는 내가 야가도 꾸준히 들어 야가 수고인데 야가는 것 때마다 나요래.
Therein are the ways in which Atisha possessed these higher trainings, and lastly, these higher trainings in wisdom, including the uncommon training in wisdom. Now we may move on to the third large heading, or rather the third subsection within within that first large heading, overarching heading, and that is how, having gained these good qualities, Atisha furthered the teachings. And Atisha furthered the teachings both in India earlier in his life, and then later in his life in Tibet.
Lamrim Chenmo Korang Sheban She Song Chen Shebaina and Kajina and Kamode Kazan Doji de Chanju Chiden Tongdola. Ani Sanjay Temple never check Mudig Medigo Sumi for the Pomber Chen and Sanjay Temple never check your Chixia. You got a Pernan Dua. And Dine Keshisho Karsias and Deva Dama Shiva. Dama Shimene, and Deva Omasli, Umata Sindaba Yise, Deva Omasli, and Dodeva Chirama to the Shirwa, or Tizugi, and that is Matuba, Kembachi, Madoba, Tobache, Robert Tobazo, Part Selche, and Tezum with the Timan member, the Temba, with the hotel Taracheres, and the Temba Yomacheres more.
In India, Atisha did many things to further the teachings of the Buddha. There are many ways in which he furthered the teachings, but what it says in the great treatise on the stages to the path to enlightenment, this text, if we were to take this as the basis for what we described, for what he did while he was in India, especially he in Bodh Gaya met the Tirthikas, the non-Buddhist extremists, and met their views with the authentic views of the Buddha, and in so doing, where individuals had no realization, he brought about realization in them. Where they held wrong views, he corrected their wrong views, and where there were doubts, he eliminated those doubts. And he was able to do that as well within the four philosophical systems or schools of Buddhism, from higher to the lower, the Madhyamaka, and then the Chittamatra, and then the Satantrika, and then lowest the Vaibhashika. All of those too, in their lack of insight, in their wrong views, and in their doubts, he was able to correct, he was able to improve, correct, and eliminate.
마 장세 이게 많이 교실인데 뭐야 네 내가 탐지 좀 이런 거 이제 되발레스 장주집에 보다도 탐지 되지 저는 랑랑 과제 신기술 신 출입과 부담요 탐지 꾸이에네 생기가를 다뤄가지 탐지 레버 게임에 시에다 오예 그래야네 라중 자다 체다 좀 미지가만 라중 자다 먹어도 자외 내가 대배 캔디 휴지 제 망가다 유지 네 말을 켜봐도 되게 코르네 시고는 탐지군이 쪼가다 되다 내가 저기 상황이 아니 좀 수수 내가 수수를 루수 가르다 좀 많이 한번 네 저저 코랑 내가 저기 나네 내가 라고 내가 제 아니 그때 시나는 뭐 되게 바로와 이내 그때 탐지기 내가 캠바제 봐도 용다 내가 내가 수수 가들 이유가 내가 상황이 아니 왜 쿵국사 용다 내가 되게 세분낭샤 여러 제가 네 때마다 다 이내 다 내가 저기 가리니까 상황을 두고 꿀투가 되게 중요해서 그러지.
And so I'll actually read from the 8 verses of praise here on the bottom of page 40. In the palace of the great Enlightenment, when all were assembled together, with speech like a lion's roar, you confounded the minds of all who argued for the poor tenets of our own and others' schools. At Otantapuri, there were 250 monks. At Vikramashila, there were almost 100. All 4 root schools were present. You did not take up the boast of the various schools, but became the crown jewel of all, 4 followers of the teacher, in all of the areas of the land of Magadha. Because you stayed with the general teachings of all 18 sects, everyone received teachings from you. In this way, Atisha met the views of the various schools of Buddhism, the sects of Buddhism, those sects, as well as the philosophical tenet systems of 4 different kinds within Buddhism. And he himself, within those 18 sects, is himself a stavira. And within the philosophical schools is that ultimate view of the prasangika. Though these were his positions and his sects, he was able to meet with commonality the other sects and the other schools and provide instruction without causing disagreement, and in that way further the teachings. So that is what he did in India, and then follows this section on how Atisha furthered the teachings, what it was he did later in his life in Tibet. In what it was that Atisha did while in Tibet is usually organized into 5 sections. The first section has to do with Tibet, and in Tibet there was an early transmission of the Buddha Dharma and a later transmission. And in the early transmission of the Buddha Dharma, it was Shiwatso Shantarakshita who came to Tibet and established Buddhism there. And then there was a decline in the Buddha Dharma in Tibet, and then it came again. There was an increase again in the Buddha Dharma, and that is when Atisha came.
뭐도 있다. 당고 쉬워서 pen 쉬워서 별로 tempo 당고 시순 쳐가 또 시순 뭐도 안에 되네 tempo 딱 강가 좀 제마 딱 별로 뒤도 뭐 치료 심바요가 변이요 와 변이에도 변이 치료 닮아 좀 발제 친구 예다 안에 되네 뭐도 별로 치료 변이 때문에 봐 남치 달아야 변이 내가 뭐 이거 지들라 러브 뭐도 내가 좀 되네 러브기 고도 그 발제도 세 아니 되지 아니 별로 거기 간다 주로 닝만 아니 다로 처음에 했습니다.
It was Shantarakshita, the abbot Shantarakshita, who came to Tibet and established the earliest monastery. And there at the time in Tibet, there were other religious traditions, especially the Bon tradition. And the presence of the Bon tradition was a hindrance to the establishment of the Buddha Dharma. And so Shantarakshita was invited to help negotiate that, or rather to help to promote the Buddha Dharma in the face of this pre-existing tradition, and did so. And then from that early establishment of Buddhism in Tibet came the early tradition, the ancient tradition of the Nyingma, the old tradition. So there's a lot to go into here, but if there's some questions, we can use this time for questions. How is it going? If there's some questions, this is the time.
Thank you, Joshua. These four groups, I'm getting a brain freeze here. With the Prasamhika, the Chittamatra, the Vaibhashika, and what was it?
Das die Juptama shi yobadi tata dringimdu ani karisa ani tambuti ani umatangiro yana dene simsamba yana dene karisa dodeba yana dende karisa dende rebe karre sumso
tudamo shisha
lao
tudamo shisha modu tawa namsha shidan yorwa chu milu shidu ani kono shi mo pen chu yedan shi jaban to ne tudamo shi su kenen shi murwa that modu umabas ani tani da te unane bas that shi jabu chigi yebe tale mo chigi mebe tale mo chigi kaga digiga sem da nam umante da deetela umabas tosho de jana umabas da tudakande studu ko adela umaba sem zama singini ani duji che tamje ani demba dubare dumaje kana demba ma dubare sanji yorwa
양계선다
duji che tamje
어르르
demba duba dumaje dezo demba ma duba 이는 제가 막 너들 좀 그래 내가 뒤에는 두마는 내가 두마랬어. 어디에 그다 수수기 키는 미래로 오기 아니 그다 되게 요구요. 그래서
for these views, for these four philosophical systems, there are four different philosophical systems in correspondence with four various positions taken regarding existence as it is, or reality as it is. And the highest position is that of the Madhyamaka, and there it is called the middle way, the Madhyamaka, because it is separated from, or it has divested itself from the two extremes and is thereby in the middle. And those two extremes are the extremes of existence and non-existence. Those having divested from those, the Madhyamaka is in the middle. and that is the highest view. Then next is the Chittamatra view, and in the Chittamatra view, compounded phenomena exist and are. Non-compounded phenomena are untrue and are untrue. And but it's a compounded phenomena are true, and non-compounded phenomena are untrue. And then within the two lower systems, both compounded and non-compounded phenomena are true, and these make the four philosophical systems. Ale, tama karismi? Kiran. Now, if we're traveling to the capital, say, and we need to arrive there, we'll take one route or another there, and we might go to this place first, and then this place, and then this place, all ultimately to arrive at the capital. And so we say to each other, here's where you go, and then you go here, and then you go here, and then the final destination is the capital. So this is the way you go. You can go through these towns on the way to the final destination. In the same way, in order to likening the final destination to the ultimate view, in order to arrive at the ultimate view, one may go through these places. One may go these ways. And because there are these ways to the final destination, there are these four schools.
Thank you, Krishna. I'm wondering if you could clarify the differences between Vajrayana, Tantrayana, and the secret Madhyana.
Lasso di kiran sel chachik na ronang de ani dorje tekpa seri chik yore dene karisa gyu seri di yore dene ani sanga seri di yang yore mendrawa sum di yobe nangne ani ti reje gi kechu ani sabuchini na ronang
근데 단단하고 겨 말이야. 민 아니 나 피과리고 나 피과시라고 아니 도지 피과시라고 아니 규 피과시라고 그때 좀 도지 피과시라고 뭐 배고 간다 시골에 가서 딱 간다 그 뭐한테 템포 사들이 이제 도지 피과시 민다 상하이 피과시들 상하이만 그 안에 상하치니 와 상하치니 아니 라면 두고웨이드 상하티고라 하고 규이티고스 좀 봤다 규이티고스 나 규이티고스라 도티고라 용거잖아 그냥 규이티고는 도티고라 나 그니요 어디서 그 규이티고스에디 맞아 반다 질러비 규가도 우진 마진 마냐네 지고에 규이티고스라고 어디지 저래
써보죠. These are three different names for a system of practice that is of the same essence. The Vajrayana is a description of the way in which the practice's essence is stable and indestructible. the way in which it is indestructible. So it is called the Vajrayana. It is called too the secret Mantrayana because this practice is done in secret. And in order to achieve and accomplish the practice, it is done in secret. And then it is also called the Tantrayana because this is in contradistinction to the Sutrayana. And the Tantrayana is the tradition of practice with its blessings within the Tantrayana as opposed to the Sutrayana. 그래서 mantra. In the mantra, mantra Sanskrit, in the mantra, that mantra, through that mantra, the ordinary mind is deposed, and in its place, the mind and aspect of the deity take shape. And so, in that mantra, through that mantrayana practice, our ordinary mind is deposed. And in its stead is the mind of is the aspect of the deity in the generation and completion stages.
We have more merit in modern times, like it's easier to practice in modern times because we have more merit. So then people earn more merit for practicing like through hardship.
Also, 그래서 드디라 네 나마당 두르나 아니 소남 채워래라 냠는 제기는 소남 채워래 아니 디 강에 아니 마보 옆에 내갑 되라 아니 냠는 채나 아니 소남 채워 사용이래 야면 아니 그래서 아니 강에 총에 제베 내갑 되라 아니 냠는 채나 아니 그래서 소남 채워 토기를 가두 채워 가두 토기를
당분대로 와 당분 꿀ung 개침고체 꿀ung부터 지난 군이 강에 채워 중앙 대자 맞아요 꿀ung 대 가주 상고 슈치고에나 되게 개와 채워 여버디 아마티세 그 나는 이번에 가서는 먼저 니대로 왔다 그냥 먼저 배샤모 더다로 채워에나 강에 채워 중앙에서 먼저 강에 충을 가두라 손놈 사와들 강에 채워 가두라 손놈 사와들 개와 채지 요리스 꿀ung도 인지미지 거라 아마도 꿀ung 찍고 이거이나 아니 같이 그래라는 강에 채워 이거 안 소사와들 손놈 채 요리스 양 꿀ung도 맨날 집에 개발도 말아
맞아
다 너무 꿀ung도 개지 보제 다 꿀ung 찍고 이나 강에 채워 가도 지로 우리는 아주 지도나 성장해 맨날 아니 고시라는 로고 제자만 이렇게 무슨 제자만 다치도 남녀고 사무지나 아니 맞고 걸 지도 숨겨 제외이나 난 걸 민제 치료 위나 뭐 그거까지 잡는다 그 쉬우야고 제자가 대나시 아니 나도 수수감이 이렇게들 아니 다 고간다 소 싸우는 소 체요 그래서
So let's not start first with times of greater or lesser hardship, but instead with motivation, intention, and the purity of that intention. That really is the basis for how much merit will accrue. But if the virtuous mental attitude is the same in times of greater hardship and lesser hardship, then during times of greater hardship, one will achieve more merit. One will accumulate more merit, and that's if the motivation is the same in both circumstances. So it really comes down first and foremost to the mental attitude, and then the circumstances. But when you think about circumstances, you can see the way in which more is asked of us during times of hardship, when society is troubled. Then at those times, we're responsible for more. There's more ways in which we can assist others. And so then when we do that, then people will say, yes, this person is really working towards the well-being of society. And in those circumstances of great social hardship, then with the same mental attitude as times of lesser hardship, that time of greater hardship will bring about more merit for that person. Duce dan dumace duce dan dumace nika ani temba sigiore di tupta roma den zro duce gichu dan dumace gichu nika ani temba drupares. Okay. So within the two lower schools, both compounded and non-compounded phenomena have true existence, are true. So how is it so? Di 그래서 두 책이죠, 단 두 책이죠, 니가 네 그래서 네 드베 인당 육성
디로와 저는 다른 파탄 다운 파티 분다네. 그냥 나서로 나이요 말이스. 당수 누구 디로와 수준 나 가와요래. 나이요래 요 말, 나 가와요래. 그러나 어디 그때시는 시제로와. 그때시는 시제로와. 당고 제가 마오라나 나도 가와요래라나 아니 나도 수불을 주고 하고서 제가 먼저 내 나한테도 내 수불을 주고 수를 주고 나한테도 하시러 다들 야도는 지라마오는 맞다 그 신신 남셔서 쌤 나만 가서 내기 쌤들이 다들 야도는 쌤다 말이죠 쌤들이 레데이나 지금 말했어 쌤들이 아니 예단되고 쌤들이 예단되어와 그 생기고 쌤들이 예단돼 그게 나도 담바데 니나에 말했다. 본바서야 살 본바 요구도 디나시 말했어. 쌤 바자가 되는 영어예요. 쌤 바자가 되는데 쌤아요 잘해서 나 기후를 루이데 마마 쌤데 마마 나 바르 민다요들에 민기 따버리기 가 신다 요 말했어. 어제다 고마요 땅도 제가 딱 마요 땅이 나도 유지원이 여기도 내 말을 말했어. 그 가시 갔습니다 말이죠. 막 유지원의 여대 있는 여당이 쌤도 쌤 유인념도 맞으나 요 말해서 제가 쌤이요. 제가 유인이요. 다 뒤로 유인이 뭐야? 그 유인 자원이 요 말. 고파 민기 딱 봤어 말했어. 민기 고 부바스타 그냥 피어스라도 그냥 샤이스라도 민다도 그냥 요. 민기면 그냥 요 말했어. 제가 내일 최대 여당이 대시 돈에 그것이 샤워와
Okay, so here then, to understand the four different philosophical schools, we essentially have to look at the statement, I'm here. We think to ourselves, I am here, or I am not here. And we point to ourselves and say, I'm here. And if we ask, where are you? In what are you? Where are you? Then the four different philosophical schools, in short, will have four different sorts of answers. Now the Vaibhashika will say, indeed, yes, I'm here, my body's here. Look to my body, and there you find what is here. and then the Sautrantika school will say, not the body, but here, look to my mental continuum. Look there, and that is where I am, this I am. And then the Chittamatra will say, yes, it is that the mind is where we identify I and me, but it's a different way. The operation of the mind is different than what we describe in the Sautantrika. The mind is actually the latencies, karmic latencies that determine mental experience. There, look to find where the I is. And then ultimately, highest in the Madhyamaka and the Prasangika view, the way in which that which we say is, or the I that we say is, the way in which it is not, it does not resemble the ordinary way that something is itself from what it's derived from, like you make a pot from earth or something like that. It's not at all that way. Instead, in the Prasangika view, it is mere imputation, mere naming. It is only in the name I, or for instance, when we say Shire, when the name Shire is there, then Shire, the I that we point to, is there. When Shire, the name, the label is not applied anywhere, Shire is not anywhere. Now later we will look at the various supports or bases that then entail their own emptiness of inherent existence based on different bases, different supports for that process of exposing the absence of inherent existence. We'll look at more and questions will come up at that time. But for now, quickly to understand where you might begin with the Prasangika view, when we think, where is the I? Where is the I? Is it the body, the head, the stomach? It's not there. When you actually perform an analysis to find where it is, you don't find anywhere that it is. You find nowhere that it is. And so when the mind hears of an I, when the mind is related a visual of an I, of a thing, when it isn't analyzed, that place where that is, where one would indicate and point to that very I, no such I is there to be found. So you may begin the Prasangika view just to venture into where it begins there with that description, and remember the story of Gamboa and the instruction he gave to the older woman, and he acknowledged or pointed out that I, when we hear I, when we hear I, when we see a form that is I, when we hear it, when we see it, and then when we imagine it, we can imagine something big or small. It appears to the mind, and it appears clearly to the mind. But then it's all appearing clearly to the mind. But then, when beyond that, you investigate where it is beyond the mind, nothing is found. And then you have two qualities that describe this absence, and it is clear voidness or luminous voidness.
Amaya boy, not to Jay, not Petty, not boy, not Moises, not singing to one and not near to do not. And it omit out of what is the response.
So then when we say I'm good, I'm bad, I'm male, I'm female, I'm this or I'm that, with an analysis, you can begin to penetrate the view of emptiness. Any other questions?
Thinking, my question is what samadhi means and what the distinction is between samadhi and shamatha, or shamatha conjoined with insight, sort of, yeah.
Thing is in seriety, shine shi ha sungrel. Jinso sungi kebar kares. That's a big question.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay. Well, maybe.
Shila Sunday thing is this. Tampa Shila Sunday thing is this. Thing is Shishu Chades. Shine, Hadoni, Yamdo, Gom to me, Jorva. Shine, Hadoni, Yamdo, Gom to me, then Shila Sunday thing is this one. Shine singing, Luigi, Shine singing, same that, but we got chick the government, we got chicken, chill government, my was to temple, and you couldn't go to a Java. The Chinese, the thing is in the land, she not Niga Yoris. Thing is really done by Sanji, you think it's your Sanji, you think it's your and Tony Toby was I think it's your Midaba, everything is Mambo. Thing is, this is Shila Sunday, thing is that another dinner, beauty, thing is the catcher. Thing is called. But I'm not regular in another Suzuki Casa, Talati, some of those bomb then, putting it zero. Now don't you mean a gom with tempo, there's something is zero. And I thought, is it gom Janica, nothing is zero. She didn't see the good gom that Suzuki sent the leader, there's temper towards Gorba. That temper told me, and the best sent it. She need to talk with China and now don't tell you any, she lost with her.
So first the samadhi of shamatha and vipassana, joint shamatha and vipassana, or quiescent meditation conjoined with special insight. That samadhi is the most accomplished level of samadhi. And it is the highly accomplished samadhi that comes from conjoining shamatha, that quiescent or serene meditation, with insight. And when those are conjoined and meditated upon conjointly, then that is serenity and insight conjoined samadhi. Now, serenity or shamatha itself describes the mind in single-pointed, uninterrupted engagement with its object of meditation. That engagement is stable, uninterrupted, and may occur for a long time. It's describing a somewhat more narrow event. The samadhi generally, samadhi describes quite a few different events. It is the most pervasive or general term. And what samadhi or concentration is describing is any form of meditation, any concentrated meditative engagement. It may be concentrated meditative engagement upon something ordinary, or it may be an ordinary object, or it may be that concentrated engagement with the concept of impermanence, or with a basis that exposes emptiness, or any number of other objects of meditation. But any concentrated application of the mind then is a form of samadhi or concentration. But then when that concentration is endowed with the serenity of shamatha, and then additionally conjoined with critical insight or special insight, then you have serenity and critical insight conjoined concentration or samadhi. Did that help?
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, we can go into a prayer. So then here, today's lesson, today's class comes to an end, but we touched on meditations, actual meditations, and meditations that begin with the fundamental inquiry into what exactly is this I that we refer to. And you now know that there are these four schools that will offer the answers that they do. And if you actually do for 5 or 10 minutes, perform this very meditation, then you'll be able to gain an a useful understanding. And then in the future, as our inquiry into what exactly the view of emptiness entails continues, it'll be beneficial. So now we'll do our closing prayers. Page 12. From my two collections, vast is space that I have amassed, from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds wisdom lies blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my life beyond reaching. May I find the best of the paths of the complete teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by practicing. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings, with the points of the path as I have discerned them. May I uphold the Buddha's teaching for a very long time, with my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined. May I offer this treasure of happiness to aid all sentient beings. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted them peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by following the complete graduated path to enlightenment and the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings that eliminate adversity and make things conducive for practicing the excellent path never be parted with any of their violence from the purest path. Whenever someone makes an effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. I dedicate whatever virtues I have ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. In the land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all powerful, sinless, infinite, and forgetful. Please remain until cyclic existence is ended. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra realize things as they are, also I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all the roots of virtue with the dedication by the victorious Lesbian of the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva's deeds. May the supreme jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen rise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Thank you. Thank you.
Tục Sư Nang, kia sư là